Welcome to TOI Auto, ladies and gentlemen, and today we've got Mr. Shashank Srivastava from Maruti Suzuki India Limited with us. We are at the drive of the all-new Maruti Suzuki Fronx, and before we go ahead and drive the car and of course give you a detailed review, we will speak to Mr. Srivastava and know a bit more about the company's plan and what they have planned for the Fronx. So thank you so much for speaking to us,
Thank you.
Mr. Srivastava.
Thank
And
you.
first of all, the name the name Fronx. Can you tell us what the name means and why it was chosen? Because a lot of our viewers and readers have been asking us, what does it mean?
Yeah. So, this segment, the compact SUV segment, has got, it's very competitive. It's got many brands, actually almost 20 brands in India.
Right.
And, uh, uh, this vehicle is, is the, it's something which is absolutely new. It is futuristic. It is modern. Uh, it's loaded with technology. So we thought we would give it a name which would signify the next. And the name Fronx come from the next frontier. So the Fron part comes from frontier and the X part comes from the next. So it's the next frontier in this segment. That's why the name Fronx.
Okay. And now with the Fronx coming into this entire scheme of the things, you spoke earlier how your SUV segment share was less, but now you're looking at market
Yeah.
leadership
Yeah.
in the next year. So what role will the Fronx play there? Especially you also have Jimny lined up, you have the Grand Vitara sales now normalizing.
Yeah.
So what kind of role do you see the Fronx playing within all these models?
Yeah, so as I just mentioned, it's in the compact SUV segment. That segment is the largest segment in the industry today. It's almost 22.5% of the industry. In the financial year 22-23, in this segment, almost 8.7 lakh vehicles were sold. So it's a very large segment and a very important one. We have one model there, which is the Brezza. And we believe when a segment gets large, you have the emergence of sub-segments within the larger segment. And within that segment, for Brezza, we have is there already from our stable, and it's the leading SUV in the country today. But the segment is very large, and we thought there is a type of consumer who is urban, technologically very savvy, wants a lot of features, and is looking for something of a more modern design. And that is why we brought in the Fronx. So we believe Fronx would give us good volumes. And as far as the other segment is concerned, which is a more niche segment, it's a lifestyle SUV used largely for off-roading, or at least to give the image of off-roading. For that, we had launched the Jimny. And these two products should give us an edge in this segment anyway. We are the leading manufacturer in this segment with the Brezza. And also, as you mentioned, the Vitara, which we launched in September end last year, in the mid SUV segment. Now, mid SUV segment is also pretty large, it's almost 19.5% of the total market. So, with these four models, we believe our SUV market share will increase. At the moment, I mean, if you look at last year, our market share was just about 10%. It has moved up to 13% in 22-23. But if you see the last quarter, when we had a reasonably good supply of the Brezza and the Vitara, it was almost 17.5%. And with the Fronx and Jimny, with the Vitara for the full year availability, we expect that we will be market leaders in the SUV segment also, with about 25% of the overall SUV market.
Now, with the Fronx right now, how many bookings have you got till date? And also, you mentioned the kind of buyer for Fronx, like urban, modern,
Yes.
futuristic. So, what trends are you seeing in those bookings? The inclination towards variants, towards the turbocharged engine.
So we started the bookings of Fronx and the Jimny around the Auto Expo time, as you know, which was in January. So far, Fronx has got about 17,000 bookings, and Jimny has got about 25,000. So that's a total of 42,000 bookings that we have had. For the Fronx, I noticed particularly that about 54% of the bookings are the turbo category. So Fronx has got two engine choices. One is the powertrain with 1.2 liter K series engine, and the other is the 1 liter turbo. So 55% of the bookings, 54% of the bookings currently are for the turbo version.
And going forward, once the initial demand for the Fronx is done, few months down the line, do you see a similar ratio for the turbo engine being maintained, or do you see this number changing?
I think, I mean, personally, I think the number would change, would actually go down. This is my personal opinion, because we haven't yet announced the prices. We'll be announcing the prices when we start the actual sales, which should happen in the last week of April. Turbo obviously is a more expensive proposition. The connoisseurs, the people who are really want to enjoy driving and performance-oriented consumers, they have probably booked the turbo already. And that is usually the case, that when a booking starts for a new model, it's the top end and the more expensive and the more exotic vehicles which get the preference of the people who book the vehicles, and later on it stabilizes at something which is like a more average or a more regular or a stable sort of demand. So I would expect this 54% to come down a little bit, and correspondingly the 1.2 liter to go up after we announce the prices and we see the market stabilize.
Okay. And as you move towards gaining the market leadership spot in the SUV segment, what is the state of things in terms of supply? How are things? Are you seeing things improving, the global scenario, in the India scenario, and what's your expectation, or what's your outlook, say, in the next 1 to 2 years?
Actually, it's very important question, I believe, because something which we have been grappling with the whole of last 2 years. We have had semiconductor issues leading to supply shortfalls of components and the production thereof. So we have a huge number of bookings, and we would like to produce those vehicles as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, the problem continues. We lost almost 47,000 vehicles in Q3, as we have announced. We lost a large number actually in Q4 as well. We are losing production in the month of April this quarter also. So I would expect this problem to continue for a few more quarters. In fact, very recently we have in the regulatory filing with this stock exchange, we have announced that in this year also we will have problems related with production because of semiconductor supply issues. It's not as bad as it was, let's say, 2 years back when we had just 40% of the plant production. It went up to about 94-95% now. But the problem is now also very much there for some of the models, and where we see a very long waiting periods. I think the problem will continue. And the next question that people normally ask is, when will it become 100% normal? And the short answer is we don't know, because we have very little visibility going forward of the semiconductor supplies. And therefore, we are just revising our estimates of production and schedules as and when we get the information, which is sometimes on a weekly basis.
And one question I want to ask is, I'm sure this question has been asked to you a lot of times. Uh, with the Fronx, do you see cannibalization happening with the Baleno? I mean, when I say a lot of times earlier, I've been asked this question because Maruti has had a lot of models where
Yeah,
there's been
yeah,
competition between
yeah.
each other. So, do you see that happening, and what kind of effect, or would it have any impact?
Sure. So, see, we have 17 models spread across all these segments. So, we have models in every segment, multiple models in every segment. So, a certain amount of cannibalization is possible and is actually a reality. But it's also important to give choice to the consumers, because the choices of the consumers are becoming more specific now. And that is why we have so many models. And I would guess for Fronx, there would be an overlap in terms of the consideration set for the consumers, and therefore some cannibalization. But I would also hope, or I would like to imagine that we would take a lot of volume from our competitors. So in this segment, we have real competition from the Sonnet, from the Venue, from Nexon, from Punch, and so on. So I think this vehicle will take a lot of volumes from these competing products also. And overall, I think it will add very much to our numbers in the SUV space. And as I mentioned, we are looking forward to improve our market share from about 17.5% in Q4 to almost 25% next year.
Okay. I think that answers most of the questions I had because we'll keep it limited to Fronx today.
Okay.
But I think something that a lot of people have been asking us, and I think Mr. Srivastava will answer, when is the Jimny coming finally?
Yeah, so Fronx, as I said, is coming in the last week of April, and a couple of weeks after that, we will see the Jimny also coming in. So it should be any time now. Yeah,
Now. Brilliant.
yeah.
So that's it from Mr. Srivastava for now, and we will bring more action from the Fronx Drive with you shortly. So thank you for staying tuned in.